Hello, BookTube. Yesterday, for the whole length of the day, I had a heartbeat and I was drawing breath for the whole of the day. And because those two things were true, I accumulated books because I guess that's all I need to accumulate books. So I wanted to show you the little pile of books that I accumulated yesterday without even trying. Barely without going anywhere. It was a bright, warm, sticky day, just lovely. And I got a pile of books. Some are very familiar. The first one is very familiar. In fact, the first one you would think there would be no reason for me to ever acquire another copy, and that is this lovely, oversized mass market of Dune by Frank Herbert. With this particular cover design with the two tiny figures on a sand bar there, that all in a black background. Really like this design. And I have this. I have this mass market paperback. I have the 3 mass market paperbacks that preceded it. I have the 3 that followed it. I have gift hardcovers, leather hardcovers, ordinary hardcovers, book club editions, you name it. And I have it. And yet I have another one now. So this is probably the 20th copy of Dune that I have. Pretty much the only one that I don't have is... there are a lot of editions of Dune that I don't have. But the one that I would want, there's a science fiction, Masterworks of Science Fiction cover where the focus of the cover is a sandman, a sand rig worker, an armored, dusty figure with a piece of equipment on his shoulder. And only in the background do you see an enormous worm. I really like that cover. I have that as an ebook, but... I don't know that it was ever made on a physical book. This, of course, is widely regarded as one of the greatest science fiction novels ever written. I certainly think so. I've talked about it endlessly on this channel and on other channels. The story of a young man named Paul Atreides who gradually, through a random set of circumstances, becomes the Mahdi, becomes Muad'Dib, becomes a transitional religious figure with superpowers and a massive following who will change the galaxy. He will change the galaxy where he is born. Our galaxy. Although it's not Earth that he's changing. Still, it goes on for... Frank Herbert pursued this story for half a dozen books. In my opinion, they're all great. We've done read-alongs on this channel and chapter-by-chapter read-throughs on this channel. Every summer, I admit, when it gets really hot, I am drawn to this book. Because Dune is a furnace planet. It is boiling hot, except at night when it's freezing cold. Any of you who spent any time in the desert will know what that feels like. It's pretty disconcerting the first few times it happens to you. You hear about it first. You don't believe it. And then suddenly it happens to you, and you really know what it means for the desert to be cold. I love this book. I love the pacing of it, the balance of it. I love the appendices in the back. In order to give this book at least a token use, as opposed to just getting another copy of Dune and throwing it on the pile, I will reread and study the appendices in the back, which are really, there's some really, really interesting stuff in them. But yeah, without moving, while sitting on the fainting couch, I acquired another copy of Dune. I also got this thing. This is from the Mammoth book series. For a long time in the 1990s. Is it Carolyn Graff? Yeah, Carolyn Graff put out thick paperback anthologies called the Mammoth Book of. They were a hit for Carolyn Graff. They did really, really well. They were anthology volumes, the Mammoth Book of Eyewitness History, the Mammoth Book of Roman Whodunits, the Mammoth Book of you name it. You name it. And they did a volume for it. Sometimes more than one volume for it. Like, for instance, the Mammoth Book of Sherlock Holmes pastiche stories. It wasn't called that, but there were a number of those. And on and on and on. And I often really liked those volumes. Mike Ashley did a lot of them as the editor. And I really liked a lot of them. A lot of them struck me as safe. Which I don't view that as a kiss of death for an anthology. Oftentimes I just want an anthology to bring together interesting things. I don't care if you're challenging me or upsetting me or thwarting the male gaze or whatever. And when this thing came out in the late 1990s, I grabbed it, mainly for the editor, who was Peter Burton. This is the Mammoth Book of Gay Short Stories. And Peter Burton, if you're going to get an editor for a book with this title, you really want it to be him. He was the absolute doyen of gay literature, fiction and nonfiction, the gay world, gay writing, gay journalism, certainly. He was there before there was a groundbreaking. He was the groundbreaker. He was the path setter, and he seemed a natural choice to bring together an anthology of gay fiction. Gay short stories is what it says on the cover. But there are excerpts from longer works in here. There are oddities in here that aren't technically short stories. This came out in the late 1990s. When all but, I think, 2 of the authors in the table of contents were still alive. Now almost all of them are dead. And at the time, I thought, well, this is very interesting. It's interesting, first of all, because it's not American-centric. And that's interesting in its own right, since gay writing was everywhere. With varying degrees of forthrightness, depending on local laws. But still, there are names in here that you won't see, that you wouldn't, in the 1990s, you wouldn't have seen it in another gay anthology. Not that there were all that many of them, but you wouldn't have seen them. That was one aspect of Peter Burton's personal touch that I was hoping to see in this book, and I did see it. But another aspect of his personal touch was being able to spot talent. It's a very unsung literary book chat world talent. I think a lot of people who are not in the literary world think that everybody in the literary world has it, or certainly that it's common, considering how many literary agents there are out there. Little secret here that's not a secret at all is that most literary agents, and by most I mean 95%, couldn't spot literary talent if it walked up to them with a name tag on it that said, "Hi, and my name is literary talent." Most editors can't either. Certainly most writers can't. And even the few writers who can often will deny that they're looking at literary talent because they're petty and jealous and whatnot, territorial. The ability to spot talent is rare. And Peter Burton has it. He had it. In the 1990s, he was overbrimming with it. And I was expecting, therefore, a little bit more from this anthology than I got. I read this when it came out, I think, 1998. 1999. I read it before the year 2000. I know that. I read it before Y2K. And it went, my copy, the copy that I bought this for like, $11. My copy of this thing, this little purple anthology, went on a shelf that I had at the time for gay literature and gay anthologies. I was curious at the time. I wanted to put all these, I wanted them all. I wanted to be able to revisit them. But I was also curious how they would age. Because in the late 1990s, the world of being gay, especially in the West, was still convulsed in the AIDS epidemic. In a seismic way. It had changed everything. A deadly, incurable illness that can lurk inside your body for years without manifesting, and that seems only to target gay people. That was the initial description, the initial characterization, of AIDS, and that had a gigantic effect on the literary world. Not least of which was that it cost the literary world 40% of its writers, who just died young. A lot of the people in this anthology died young. They died when they had, a full head of hair, big boyish eyes, and had a long literary career in front of them. And I put this on that shelf with those other anthologies thinking, well, considering that fact, considering that a bomb went off in this world, I'll want to see how these anthologies age. I'll want to see how they change over time. I'll want to revisit them over time. And the reason why I grabbed this book, the reason why this book found its way to me yesterday, was because I didn't have a copy. And the reason why I didn't have a copy is because I got rid of it. Even with that shelf, even with that consideration, I still got rid of it. I thought, well, Peter Burton, yes, a minor deity, but he didn't put together all that interesting an anthology, so I can let it go. I don't need all the anthologies. I just need the good ones. Uh, and when this came to me yesterday, I thought, maybe I should revisit that. Maybe I should. Maybe there's all sorts of stuff going on here that I didn't see at the time, 30 years ago, and that I will see now. If anybody could do that, if anybody could slip an actually wise agenda past me on first inspection, it would be Peter Burton. So I was happy to have this, but I couldn't help but notice that I am not the only person who had that initial reaction, because written right on the first page in pencil by whoever owned this before I did is this. I don't know if you can make that out. It says entirely mediocre collection. That's that was wild to read. I didn't write that. This is not my copy. I checked for my own mark, and in the unbelievably rare circumstance that this somehow my copy made it back to me, I say unbelievably rare, but that has happened to me, and, sometimes over a span of decades. So I checked. It's not mine. Someone else had that thought about this book. The same thought that I did. Such a weird thought, because mediocre is not a word that I associate with this editor. But I have this book again, and time has passed, and tempers have cooled, so now I will give it another try. Then the next book that found its way to me is also from the 90s. Is that right? No, you're from the 2000s. 2001. This was before I got back into reviewing. This was a huge hit of a debut. Oh my God. Venues could not stop talking about it. In fact, is this loaded with blurbs? It probably is. Yes. Yeah. The Newsweek, New York Review of Books, People, the Denver Post, back when that was a major thing. The Times-Picayune from New Orleans, that was back when it was a major thing. Cleveland Plain Dealer, also a major newspaper at the time. The Star Ledger, also. This is loaded with blurbs. San Francisco Chronicle, Chicago Tribune. This is a debut by David Schickler called Kissing in Manhattan. And everybody wrote about this thing. This is, I guess, what you would call a novel in short stories about feckless young people in the Manhattan of the day. It was the talk of the literary world, and in 2001, even though I considered myself to be, at the time, completely out of the literary world, and at the time, in 2000, 2001, thought I would never return to it, that I wasn't in that literary world. I wasn't in what Gore Vidal referred to as the book chat world. Instead, I was in the trenches, man. I was in the real part of it. I was selling books to actual people across an actual counter. I was actually a bookseller, a bookstore clerk, back when that meant something more than just being a barista. There was no bar. There was no anything in the bookstore where I worked. It was just books on 2 floors. And there was an information desk. And the information had to dispense information. It didn't just have to facilitate the utterly futile mailing of paperbacks to prisons or something the customer can't do on their own. No customer came in with a cell phone. Cell phones didn't exist. Customers came in and came to the information desk for information. They didn't know it otherwise. And they were at work. At their desk, they have a telephone, but they don't have a reference library at their work, and they want to know, what was the name of that book? Hey, I saw a reviewer that I really like in the Boston Herald or the Boston Globe went on at great length about this, what he called a really sexy, really jazzy debut, and I like debuts, and I know you like debuts because I talk to you at this information desk every week, but I can't remember anything about it. I can't remember what it was, and I don't have the paper anymore, and I'm at work. I'm on my lunch hour. What was it? Have you read it? Is it any good? Is it worth my time? Those sorts of things, at least in the information desks of the big bookstores that I know of. We don't have one in Boston, the home of American literacy. We don't have a big bookstore in Boston right now. But when we did, in the 21st century, as far as I know, those sorts of questions don't get asked at information desks anymore. Maybe your retail bookstore is different. But for a time, before everyone had cell phones, before the internet, they were. And I worked at one of those information desks, and it was a booming place. It was lots of fun. And I got asked about this book all the time. And the minute that I saw that it was the subject of a hubbub, I read it. My bookstore had a program for employees where you could borrow new books in hardcover. You could take the dust jacket off, leave the dust jacket in the office, and read the book. And provided you were careful with it, don't spill anything on it, don't warp it or bend it, break it or fold it or highlight it or anything like that. Provided you are, then you could, if you bring it back like new, you just slip the dust jacket back on it and put it back on the floor, on the sales floor. Under several assumptions. Assumption number one, no customer is going to notice or care if you were very careful with the book and read it before they did. Assumption number two, most customers are going to ignore it anyway. In retail bookstores, the huge percentage of the stock gets returned to the publisher. It comes to the store on basically a consignment basis. It sits there on the new release tables, and then it gets returned. It gets shipped back for a full refund. And that process, that whole system, definitely should not exist. Obviously, that system should not exist. That is why bookstores are so screwed up today. That is why they're so impersonal, and why, no offense intended to your local bookstore, their staff is so droolingly stupid about the one subject they're supposed to know about. They know how to make a triple mocha latte, but they don't know anything about the books they're selling. They can find them for you, maybe, some of the time, but they don't know anything about them. They don't read them. And one of the reasons for that is because you don't need a knowledgeable staff if you're not responsible for selling your own merchandise. If you're getting it for just such a time and then it's slated to be returned, well, then all you have to do is present it for that time and then return it and get your money back. And the third assumption for that borrowing program is attached to the second one, which is that it is, at the time, was considered self-evident that the more your bookstore staff knew about the books they were selling, the better for your bookstore. That idea is completely gone now, just completely gone, as far as I can tell. But at the time, I found a copy of this thing. I got it out of a box in receiving. It hadn't even made it onto the sales floor yet, and immediately borrowed it and read it. And, well, I don't like novels the novel in story format anyway. You know, pick a lane. you stupid Protestant. Pick a lane. Are you writing a novel or are you not? A novel is one or two stories, one major one, two or three minor ones that need the whole of that space in order to crest, climax, and recede. So if you're doing that dramatic building, that dramatic climax, that denouement, if you're doing that every chapter, then what you have written is a collection of short stories. I don't care if the people are the same from one to another. If the plot is resolved in every chapter, then you're not writing a novel. But nevertheless, being against a novel in story format back in 2001 would be like being against autofiction today. You'd be just flinging stones at the ocean. So I read it. I didn't like it much at all. I mean, there's no literary ability here at all. In terms of on the level of language, there's no literary ability. And you kind of want, you know, unless the storyteller that you're reading has amazing storytelling gifts, just in terms of what happened next, in terms of plot, in terms of surprising you. If that's true, then you can forgive an author for not having literary ability, actual line-by-line literary ability. I'm sure we all know authors like that. Well, to mention an author that I mentioned yesterday, Jack Reacher. The Lee Child Jack Reacher novels have zero literary quality at all. Obviously, they have zero literary quality. But try stopping reading one of them. They have storytelling ability out the wazoo. And to my mind, if you're not going to have the one, you should have the other. It's only certain dude bro classics that are arrogant enough to think that if they lack both storytelling ability and literary merit, you should still read their book, because they named it after a particular kind of bolt that you attach to a metal wall. That's the title of the book, is the serial number of that bolt. And it's also 1,800 pages long. So, obviously, you should read it. As far as I'm concerned, if you don't have either one of those things, no storytelling ability and no literary ability, then why would you even be arrogant enough to think that you merit my attention? At least that's the bulk of how I thought back in 2001, when I did not acknowledge that I would ever be subject to another call, which is that you would merit my attention just by existing If you're a critic, you would merit my attention just by existing. I hope that siren doesn't wake up the little baby. Maybe we'll finish before it gets here. It's a long way away. So I read this thing, and it's obviously a collection of little ideas that occurred to the author during, comings and goings from Manhattan parties. It's obvious that is what it is, that at one Manhattan party he met a really insightful, maybe evilly insightful priest. At another Manhattan party or somebody's townhouse, he noticed a really ornate old-style elevator with the metal grillwork and the marble seat and whatnot, and thought, what if you're a randy young writer in New York will be the first thing you think of in a situation like that, who met all sorts of young people at parties. And if you're a writer, maybe their dialogue, a line here, a phrase there, will stick, and you will use that. You will go back and use that. The literary world still has these figures in them, chock-a-block, up to the eyeballs. The literary world is still full of young slacker writers like this. People who think, well, if I was there and partially observed it, that's good enough to merit a novel. That's good enough to merit a novel in stories or fiction. I don't really need to work. I mean, come on, man. You're not telling me I really need to work here. I mean, do you know what they're paying me? There are young authors, and maybe not so young authors anymore, in the present moment, in the present literary moment, who in the autumn is going to be wallpapered with books exactly like this one. Feckless young people wandering around from one thing to another, mainly repurposing semi-catchy quips that the author saw online or heard at a party. And I guess there's an audience for such books, obviously, because they keep getting written, and they keep getting sold, and they keep getting praised. So, but I'm going to, obviously, this is a long lead up to say that I'm going to reread this. I mean, it's been, 25 years. So I'm going to reread this and see if maybe I was wrong. See, this will be a lot like the Mammoth Book of Gay Short Stories. I will go at this and see, well, how has that time fared? And then the last book that just rained on me yesterday, just fell out of a clear blue sky, is something that I have seen in bibliographies, and I've seen it cited in scholarly papers, but I never owned a copy, and I've never read it. It's by Judith Stoddart, and it's called Ruskin's Culture Wars. And the subtitle is Fors Clavigera and the Crisis of Victorian Liberalism. And that cartoon figure on the cover is John Ruskin. And this is about his enigmatic classic, Fors Clavigera, which began life as a series of letters, of more or less public letters, in which Ruskin is both excoriating the world around him, its social conditions, its working conditions, and also working out what he thinks about those conditions. It's one of the strangest literary autobiographies that I've ever read. I think it's deeply, deeply impressive, and in part, like so much of what else Ruskin wrote, because I'm not 100% sure the author himself understands it. I'm not sure that Ruskin himself understood what he was doing in Fors Clavigera, and that makes a difference, I think. In this case, it does, anyway. The title is a bit of a mishmash. I have always fancied an old friend of mine, long gone, rendered the title as The Nail of Fate, and I rather like that. But there are, like with everything else that Ruskin wrote, there are all sorts of ways to do it, and this is the University Press of Virginia, and it came out in 1998. And let's see here. Ruskin spoke voluminously throughout the late 19th century in opposition to the abstract theoretical musings of his day. His Fors Clavigera, a collection of monthly letters published over 13 years, offered his readers a model of critical discourse as a living material process. See, that very much sounds like a senior thesis. And I don't know who is... Judith Stoddart is an associate professor of English at Michigan State University, but that was 25 years ago. So this strikes me very much as a dressed-up doctoral dissertation, which is not, again, a kiss of death at all. In this book, The author provides the first sustained modern critical reading of Forres Clavigera, placing this classic work in the context of its Victorian contemporaries, art journals, liberal and working class periodicals, and popular criticism. In recreating the intellectual climate, she demonstrates the sense of cultural crisis and change evident at the time. And I'm up for that, totally up for that. I have never actually read this, even though I love Forres Clavigera. I think is one of the strangest and, to me, most compelling works of literature. I don't have any fear in calling it that, from the Victorian era. And here's an entire book about it that just fluttered in the window yesterday because I had a heartbeat and a pulse. So there you go. Four random books. I guess on this channel, after all these videos on the subject, I guess Dune is not a random book on this channel anymore. Certainly, I don't feel like it is. I think I love it. I absolutely love Dune. That's why I've talked about it so much on this channel. I know there are quite a few of you who are weird enough to wish that I had talked about Ruskin as much as I've talked about Dune. But I really think, even though I was pleased with this appearing to me yesterday, I really think that I should draw a moratorium on having any more copies of Dune. I really think I have enough copies of Dune, unless something extraordinary comes along. I really think I do. So, I mean, there is. I say that, I immediately think of there was a trade paperback of Dune from probably 50 years ago. Some of you will remember them. They were trade paperbacks. They were the first trade paperbacks of Dune, any of the Dune novels, and they were illustrated. They had these sort of trippy line illustrations, and also the trippy line illustration covers. Well, the covers were in color. The illustrations inside the book were in black and white. And I have a volume of that for God Emperor of Dune. I have a volume of that for Dune Messiah. I think I have Children of Dune in that set, but I don't have Dune. I don't even know. I even remember the publishing house or anything like that. But some of you, those of you who know Dune, will know what I'm talking about. It was an illustrated edition from a long time ago, and I wish I had that. But even there, that's blasphemy, because I absolutely should not have any more copies of Dune. And I ought to have. There was a big 1,000-page biography of Ruskin that I have had on and off over the years. It came out as a trade paperback. Is it by Binion? I don't have a tablet with me to look it up, but there is a big 1,000-page biography of Ruskin that I really should have, and I don't. I had a trade paperback of it years and years ago, and it's gone. I have no idea why. But anyway, those are just random books that flitted in the window yesterday. Sorry for the length of the video, just for your consideration. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.